there was a lyric in one of the first songs about, I don't remember even the song, but about your faces. Like looking out at some faces, it might be the last time. And not so much about the last time part, but just like sitting here for a minute and, because I heard the song and I thought, would I look? Would I look at the faces? Can I do that? And just feeling that in this moment, like, oh God, the beauty of having people I know who are looking at me, and I'm seeing in their eyes myself, seeing in their eyes this hope, that fire, that spark, that I've met people who have that spark. And I know you to whatever degree I know you, and vice versa. But that I know. And that's really a gift. And then the next song feels like a theme song for me this week. I was actually searching for a theme song this morning. I was like, what would my theme song be? And I didn't think of this song. I thought of certain lyrics from some other Bob Dylan songs, but lay down your weary tune and the song you sing, and then rest yourself neath the strength of strings that no voice could hope to hum. And it really struck me. And I guess I have some, very specific examples that might sound like on a small level because, we are on a small level. But examples of that, of really feeling the weary tune and the songs I've sung, and that the first step is you've got to lay those down if you want to be held by something that you can't hum, that no voice can hum, that's something beyond the amazingness of being a human being, but something beyond that. There's something that holds that all up, that we have to let something down. So I guess I want to tell you some of my examples of that because it's feeling very real to me. And I think it's a testimony to the indirect method, into the tools that Justin has provided, and the dynamic that has been provided, the all of the things that support us in doing, in being able to apply it and being able to see over and over that weary tune with a good attitude, with an understanding of where it's leading. Because you can't do that. You can't see yourself as you are without understanding where it's leading, at least, a few frames out of so many frames of seeing yourself. So I guess I'll start with, like, so much of what I've been doing lately are just like really ordinary things. It struck me recently, like, everything I do is super simple. I cook, I clean, I mow, I lop, I get dressed, I get undressed, I take care of hygiene, I walk down the hall, I get in and out of cars, I talk, I listen, a little less, I have fun, I try new things. But, none of it is, so they say, brain surgery or rocket science, There's nothing like really on the line. Maybe driving in a car a little bit with the big DR, I got to pay attention or I'm going to get blown out of the woods. But, pretty much it's all very ordinary, mundane, simple stuff, And so I've been more aware of that, I guess, because of using more tools, really making use of the indirect method in form of tools and in the form of peers and in the form of Justin. I think those are maybe like the little triangle of the indirect method that has been more real to me lately. So with the tools, when I'm more here, I see these little moments. Like the other day, I'm house cleaning, and I see a moment where I'm vacuuming, and the cord gets wrapped around the door for a second, and there's this little tiny annoyance, like, oh, it's a problem. That's a little problem. You know, it's a little problem in my little world, and oh, a little problem. But all I'm trying to do is be here. Like right before that moment when the cord got wrapped, I was trying to be here. I was trying to use a tool that brings me here in my body. And I'm trying to be here. The cord wraps around. Now there's a problem. That doesn't make any sense, you know? There's no, how could that be a problem? It's so unnecessary. And in the instant that there's a tiny little problem, and I mean little, most of you wouldn't think you had a problem. You know, you'd be like, that's not a problem. I don't have a problem when the cord wraps around. But if you're paying attention and you're deeper in that thing, you do see there's a little glitch. There's a little, but then right after that, I'm seeing that's crazy. That's so unnecessary. It doesn't even fit with what I'm after. I'm not really after vacuuming. I'm after being here. So what does it matter if it's caught or it's not caught, or I'm moving or I'm not moving? It doesn't. So I'm seeing like moment after moment of this type of level of things, which is a small level of things. But what a gift, because we have hundreds of those small level of things a day. So to see that, you know, you're putting a shirt on a hook and it gets stuck. There's a little one of those. You know, there's making a new meal for my household, and I'm nervous that it's not going to be enough. The self-importance of that, totally not necessary, ridiculous. Oh yeah, that reminds me. So ridiculous. The other day, one of these moments, sitting at lunch. Do that every day. Sit at lunch or at dinner or sometime, lots of times of eating. And that's pretty simple too. And there's a whole lot going on with sitting there eating. But I'm having lunch and my friend is there. A couple of my friends are there, and Justin, who's also my friend, is there. And we're talking, and I say something, and I'm not listening to myself talk. I don't know what I said. But Renee's laughing at me because she knows what I said, and she knows I didn't know what I say. Justin clearly knows, and of course he brings it up. And then Renee proceeds on to help me see how I didn't even know what came out of my own mouth. Pretty interesting, right? And Justin at that moment said something like, pretty much anytime you say something, you should just say, this is ridiculous. I'm ridiculous. Not just me, you too. You know? This was a philosophical comment. And it was like, you should just, that, because I was defending a little bit, I was definitely, I wasn't really saying that, I was saying this, and Renee's just cackling, laughing at me. So there was no way out, and I was like, all right, fine. And so, I see he's basically helping me have a way out by saying, you're just ridiculous. So just say every time you open your mouth, you're ridiculous. So that has stuck with me. And that's been a little bit of a thing. Like, it's ridiculous. Like the cord around the door. It's ridiculous. The little concern about how does the dinner go? It's ridiculous. If Coda was cooking dinner and he made something he hadn't made before and it wasn't that great, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't be like, oh God, Coda, he didn't make it. It wasn't as good. The flavoring wasn't quite right. Oh my God, Coda. No, I'd just be like, oh yeah, could have been better, whatever. Have a little judgment and move on, He didn't disintegrate in my mind. But if it's me, I might disintegrate if you have a negative thought about it. Or Chayla tells me, you didn't shake out the vacuum filter. I'm, no, I was going to. I was just about to do that, but you didn't know because I went here I have to explain myself. That's ridiculous. Just like moment after moment of that's ridiculous. And it's such a weary tune, Johor said something to me this morning in the kitchen. It was a little misrepresentation of who I was, and I had to come up with, no, I didn't say that. So-and-so said that. It wasn't me who said that. I was telling you what they had said. And but I had to correct him. I couldn't let that moment go. That's ridiculous. So moment after moment, and it's funny because it's tiny. Like, what is on the line here? We're talking about stupid shit, ordinary, mundane shit. But that is life, that's so much of life. And we have a way of studying all of those moments and of seeing them. And I guess my excitement about it is that it is actually fun and interesting and so available that I feel so lucky, so lucky that so much depth can be understood and learned from a little chord on the floor that shouldn't be there. Like that. So much can be learned about human nature in these little tiny moments. My nature, but your nature too. It's almost not distinguishable. It's just I happen to be the laboratory and I get to study the moments, the specificness moments of what happens in the day that I'm living. So that feels really rich and really exciting. And that all of those, well, I would say that that's an example of the 10% less or 10% better that I think everyone here was here a couple weeks ago when Justin talked at a Sunday meeting, because he talks every day and a lot every day. So, everybody comes to a Sunday meeting, but it's interesting to know, like, every day he's talking, and it's always interesting. But this one thing from 2 weeks ago, which is like a million years, he said about, the concept of enlightenment and how it's a ripoff to us, because like the Super Bowl, it's a ripoff to the process and the fun of the game of football. Enlightenment and the concept of enlightenment, whether you are or you aren't, or are you there, are you not there, is such a ripoff, because along the way there's percentages of getting lighter, getting freer, getting finer, having more fun, feeling more compassion, less protected, less need, that along the way. And if there's even just 10% difference in that, 10% more fine, 10% more free, 10% less negativity, 10% more here, if that's happening, and I'm saying it's happening, because in those moments I'm describing of feeling the tiny annoyance, it's like it's still 10% less for me than it was. It's like, I don't know what it's called, but when there's a race car, like the race cars, whatever, the really fast cars, and they have the parachutes. The drag, like the drag that slows them down at the end, just like it's a little drag. I feel that. I feel like it's like a negative emotion of annoyance. It's like a race car just zooming down the road, but then there's a little drag on it, a little pullback. It's not the same velocity of speed that it was before. It's just, somebody's opinion of me, and I'm a little worried about it. I'm not getting there fast enough. I could do it faster myself. Just get them out of the way. Just drag after drag after drag that creates a 10%, which is, I always laugh because I think of different people who 10% better, 10% free, whatever, happier. It's like a, marketing gimmick, but it does feel like that. Like overall, the intensity level of negative emotions, the depth of being here, the expansion of separateness or less separateness. If all those things are happening in 10%, that's big change. That's not subtle. That's not unrecognizable. It is recognizable. It is intense. It is life-changing. And so to feel that, just like to feel the one play in a game is everything, and it's so satisfying, and it's so fun, and it's so interesting, and it takes all your focus. It's the same as that, but that we have to recognize that, or we don't have to, but it is recognizable, And if you're feeling it, you should be talking about it, at least saying that, hey, this is actually happening, because I think we forget, because we are surrounded in a lot of fineness. We're surrounded by Justin, and we're surrounded by each other, and we know a lot. We know a lot, and we've practiced a lot, and however coarse or however limited any one of us is, it's a different world that we live in, that we are steeped in here. And that could sound like bragging, could sound like elitism or separate or something, but it is what is, because we do know a human being who is available to us all the time, pretty much all the time, for years and years and years. So how could it not be different? But because we're in that difference, I think that it's easy to forget and to take for granted what has taken place in our own selves and in each other. I was sitting, just take a breath. I was sitting yesterday in my dining room with a bunch of people, and Tish was there, and I hadn't seen her face in a while. And Pranavati was there, and Shayla, who I see her face every day. But it was like we were talking, and Justin had been in the room, and there was an interesting exploration happening. And he leaves the room, he's doing something in the other room with some other people, and they leave the room, but the four of us are still sitting there trying to explore this thing that he got going. But I was looking at Tish, who was talking to Pranavati about something, and it didn't even really matter what it was or the content of it, but Tish looked like a different person. Like, yes, it was her same face, but the face was different. It was relaxed. It was more beautiful. I mean, she's beautiful as she is, but it was more beautiful. There was something coming through, like a luminosity, in a subtle way. I'm not trying to trump it up. Sorry. That was some part of our conversation. It snuck in there. It was your fault. But I felt like, oh my God, people are changing. Tish is changing. There's something different here, and like, that doesn't happen. People don't change. Maybe if they're dying and they're in the middle of cancer or something, they'll do something different and they'll tell someone they're sorry. But to see someone I've known for years and to look at her face and think, I don't recognize her on some level. I don't recognize her. And that we need to be looking for that. I realize how much I need to be looking for that, because you kind of have to shake yourself and wake up, look, see what's there. And we have to do it with ourselves, and we have to say it with ourselves, but we also have to say it with each other and recognize it when it's happening. I guess that leads to the other thing that has been interesting for me lately is part of the indirect method, I think, is peers and working together. This idea, we hear it a lot, like, got to work together, it takes a team, you can't do it alone, all those things, and it's like, yeah, okay. Anyway, a little bit maybe, but I could pretty much do it. But lately, I feel like the universe has been conspiring to trick me into all these moments, and maybe they've always been there, but I'm just noticing them. I'm not sure which. But, I'm working out in the woods with Conway on this giant DR that's up here, and I'm pushing it, behind it. Conway's like, and I'm like, hey, I got it. And it's like, it's pulling me around. I mean, literally, when I go around a corner, my legs swing around. They do. And I make it back on my feet. but I'm with Conway, and so I do it for like 7 minutes, and then I stop. Conway stops me, and then he comes and he does it for 7 minutes, because he's, you know, brain damaged, and I'm 4 foot tall or whatever. And so, you know, we're like helping each other do this, but it's like it's so humbling, you know, because I'm trying to do this big machine, but I can only do it for 7 minutes. But so we trade off like that for like 2-3 hours, and we have mowed down some Scotch broom. Like, product has happened, but in the process, it's been this really interesting, you know, right leg, left leg kind of thing. You remember that analogy about your right leg taking care of your left leg without a thought? So it's like that. I'll see Conway. I know he wants to keep going. He could keep going. He's very strong. Even though he's got issues right now, he's strong and he's capable and he loves to do it. But I have to stop him. I have to stop him before he's ready, and he has to listen to me. It's just like we've kind of worked that out. So I stop him. That's enough, Conway. I'll take it from here. Okay, let me just turn it around for you, because that's a sight to see. So, so there's that. And then last week I was coming home from dropping Johor off in Reno, you know, pure service, and came home and and Shayla's in town, and we have shopping to do, grocery shopping, you know, and there's usually 2 stores involved in our grocery shopping. So she was like, okay, well, let's meet. And so we meet at Safeway. I got there a little early, so I did most of the shopping. She gets there, but we still go and check out together. You know, there's no more shopping to do, but she has the bags and she has the cooler, which is quite a piece. And we go to the self-checkout and we check out, and I'm doing one thing at a time and just reminding me to use tools, and I'm doing that, and she's bagging, and it's all happening. It's just like beautiful. It's like we're 4-armed body, you know, like that. I don't know if Shayla felt like that or not, but I think for a minute, and that we were just sort of like, we're one organism, you know, and doing this thing. And it was totally unnecessary, and I was almost laughing inside of the thought of, you know, I mean, I've had 3 kids. I've done a lot of grocery shopping. I've done a lot of cooking. I've done a lot of stuff all at once while changing a diaper and nursing, you know. So it's like, I don't need Shayla to help me bag. But it was really a spiritual experience to do that, you know, to have this like, I don't need it. It doesn't have to happen, but it's like retraining me. It's retraining this solo operator in me of, yeah, but it's lighter, it's less self-important. I also don't get the gold at the end, because we did this whole thing together. There was no, like, I went shopping. It's just, I don't know, shopping happened, you know, with this organism. And what a relief, what a laying down of a weary tune. What a possibility of being able to rest under something else. But that has to be laid down. You can't keep it all. You can't take it with you. You know, you got to lay some of it down. And then yesterday, we mowed the lawn together. How do you do that? You know, it's a cord. There's a cord and a lawnmower. So it was like a beautiful dance. We've done dancing together, line dancing together. And so now we're mowing the lawn, and she's putting it over and then under. And, you know, we're just doing this like dance. And I'm going in a circle, and she's pointing, no, that's a little too high. Okay, go back. You know. And it's just like this beautiful thing. But we were once again one organism, and it's like, wow, this is really great. And then the other night I made dinner, you know, like a special dinner. I made wontons, hadn't done that before. Realized you should really do that with more people. I did that one alone. But I made the dinner, and then I was a little nervous. And I was like, Shayla comes in the kitchen, and Johor's gone. Normally I would lay down my burden to Johor, like, oh, Johor, I'm scared. You know, but Shayla was there, and I was like, God, Shayla, I'm nervous, you know, I don't think it's going to be that tasty, and the sauce didn't turn out, and oh my God, you know, and she's like, okay, well, what can I do? And then she helps me set the table, and she knows how to set a table. Like, I'm just like throwing plates on, you know, like, it's not going to be pretty if I do it. She did it, and she's just like all these little thoughtful things, and the silverware is wrapped in napkins, and, you know, but it was like propping me up. It was helping me do this thing that I wanted to do. And she knew, yeah, this is hard, you know, it's a little hard, but it's hard. And she wanted to help, and she wanted to be supportive. And it's like, that's a piece of the formula, you know, that maybe I could get really good at all of those things. Maybe I could decorate the table and I could get the sauce just right and I could do all that. But what would the win be in terms of getting free, of getting smaller, of getting finer, of getting less separate? No win. It would just be strengthening this individuality and separateness and winningness. It would just be lengthening the time of being able to let down that burden, to lay it down. So it's just like, what a sweet way to learn to lay it down with help from your friends, from other people around you. I could cut down all the Scotch broom by myself, or I could have a team of 4 of us out there sweating it out 2 times a week, to do it together. But this feeling of like, yeah, we're in there. Oh yeah, there's Scotch broom. Oh, there's poison oak and there's blackberries and, but we're in this together. It's just like so sweet. Like what a really beautiful ingredient that Justin just kind of threw in the pot, like here you go. Here's some people to do this with. So I really feel that, and that feels like a miracle. So maybe I could hear from some of those people, some of my friends, who wants to talk. Okay. Right, Pranavati?
Kind of a small crowd, but a lot of people on Zoom there. I think we have 6 or 7 today on Zoom. It's nice. Thank you, Renée. Wait for Johanna. So, I've got kind of the same theme today as Jenna. It's like when Hope played that song, Lay Down Your Weary Tune, I just have had experience lately of actually being in small moments, being able and seeing myself lay down a tune that I've played all my life, that's not helpful to me or anybody else. And it came with a lot of moments of seeing myself, and so I'm gonna go to an analogy to here. I'm gonna talk about art for a little while. So I don't know, about a year ago, I was sick for a while, and I had to stay in so I wouldn't expose everybody else to what I had. And I was like looking for something interesting to do, so I found an online art history course. And I never really had delved into that before, but it looked interesting, and so I took it, and it was months long. It was not just a little short course. There was probably 60 classes, and now there's still ongoing classes. A great teacher, you could communicate with the teacher. So one of the things I learned in that class was, among many things, but one of the things I learned was how to look at art, how to go to an art gallery or online or however I'm looking at art, but like there's something to know about how to look at art and how to see what's right there in front of your face that you don't normally see unless you consider that a little bit. And so I also, besides that class, I read this book that I think Mopani found first, but a number of us have read by this time, and it's called All the Beauty in the World, and it's written by a man who was a guard at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. And it was his experiences, his life experiences, his experiences with the visitors to the museum, with the other employees, and with the art. And the way he talked about art and talked about looking at art taught me something also that I hadn't, something different that I hadn't learned from the course that I took. And so fast forward to last week, and 3 of us went to San Francisco. And we went to 2 art museums, among other things. And one of them, well, the De Young was one of them. And so taking what I had learned to this art museum and walking in there with an intention of looking at it the way I had learned, I had a completely different experience than I'd ever had in my life, of an experience of depth, of maybe seeing what the artist was getting at, of seeing the details, of going into the painting, you know, being with it, and that those powers of observation that I had learned had changed my experience completely of going into an art museum and seeing art. So likewise, as Indian gurus like to say, likewise, Justin has taught us how to see ourselves in small moments. It's like, you know, I'm standing in front of this painting and I'm standing there for a moment. I'm seeing this. In the next moment I'm seeing that. But I'm there, I'm really looking. And he's given us methods and tools to actually be able to see ourselves in small moments. One moment, another moment, another moment, 1,000 moments, 10,000 moments. It all adds up, you know. And there's one tool in particular that I've been focusing on more lately. And that tool, let's say I've had more success at using that tool than I have had in the past. A lot more, actually, success. I really felt I've experienced it to a deeper level, much deeper level. And so because of that, we're on this trip. The 3 of us are on this trip. And, you know, we're interacting. We're together for pretty much most of 3 days. And, you know, when you're interacting with people, there's stuff that comes up all the time, you know, little things inside, you know, little annoyances, little disagreements, you know, along with the nice stuff too. I'm not saying that's not there, but this is, you know, this happens. And so as I'm going through the days and all the things that we're doing together, all of a sudden I'm realizing in many moments, a lot of moments that I can think of, I can see this little thing coming in that's going to be like little snarky comment or a little, you know, annoyance or a little, you know, whatever. I'm really a nice person. But you know, that, and I see that. It's just like, oh, there it is. And I have a choice. I'm free to choose. I can choose to go with it, do my same old whatever thing, or I can just let it go. Simple as that. It was as simple as that. It was really cool, you know, because it wasn't just once. It was like, oh, there it is again. I can let it go. I didn't always let it go. I'm not that good, but, you know, it was really like I know it was a result of really going for it with this particular tool and seeing myself not just in this latest iteration of the use of this tool, but over the years also, but seeing myself in the moment over and over and over again until finally something gets through. Something gets through that when I'm in a moment, like right here in this moment, I can be aware of whatever it is, whatever that thing is that's coming in and trying to hijack me. And I can say no. I can say yes too, but I do have that choice. And so one of the gifts that we're given of the many, many is the freedom to choose. I can choose to do this, to say this or not to say it, to say this or to say that, to ignore a friend in need or to offer a helping hand. There's choices all the time, small, mostly small, almost all the time small. But just to have that awareness that there is a choice and I can choose. And I'm really not talking about big choices, so I'll give you an example. So before we went to the DeYoung Museum, I read up on it a little bit. And there's a few things that interested me, and one thing was this piece of art that Andy Goldsworthy did. He's an artist that makes art out of nature, basically. And so I don't know how this is out of nature, but actually what he did was, with the people that were installing the pavement that goes up to the museum, he made a crack from the curb to the door of the museum. And so I'm like, okay, I've never seen an Andy Goldsworthy in person. I want to see this crack, So we're walking up to the museum, and I'm all excited to see this crack. And Renée and Geneviève I kind of said something to them, oh, let's go see the crack. And they were talking or something, I don't know. And I instead of insisting that they go looking for the crack for me, because I'm probably the only one that's interested in this crack, I mean, who would be? I just went, oh, I can just go do this on my own. It's like a stupid little thing like that. And I had fun following the crack, and it went up through some stones and all over the place. And I was wandering around like a mad person. But, it was like, okay, I can let that go. It's like a little tiny moment, just a little moment. Doesn't mean anything, really. But when you add them up, they do mean something. You add them up, and they mean the difference between peace of mind and being all stirred up, between being a friend and not being a friend, between, awareness and oblivion, really. Really, that's what it is. These tools and methods that we use, we can't direct them. I can't think, I want this result or I want that result. I can't think it, I can think it obviously, but it's not going to happen like we foresee it. It's like we do this work, we try and see ourselves with the methods and tools that we have and with the help from our friends. And it's like alchemy, kind of. I don't direct it. I put forth the effort. And then every once in a while I get to see, oh, huh, this is different. Something's dropped away. Something's dropped away from me. And it's really a beautiful experience. And like, you know, like when I studied art and I learned how to look at art, and I went to the museum and I had this really incredible experience at that museum. But I couldn't change the painting I was looking at. The painting's the painting. It's always going to be the painting. It's always going to be the same. But with observing myself, learning how to see myself, things are going to fall away. It's going to happen. It does happen. And I've seen it in myself, and I've seen it in everyone that I know here, that I've known for years. Undoubtedly. So those of us who've been around for a long time have been using the tools for years. There's people that are new that are just getting some tools. They're potent. I'm telling you that they're potent. It might not seem like it at first, or maybe it does, but they are.
That's a really beautiful song. It's not something. It's like so much feeling, or anyway, I have a lot of feeling when I'm listening to it, and I kind of project the feeling, I guess, of the person. But you know, like so many lines, and even the lock of hair. You know, like the caring that went on there for the person who gave the other person the lock of hair, and then of their friend, and then the other person who gets to see the lock of hair. I mean, it's very sweet. I have a lock of hair from my cat that I used to have, you know, years ago. I think hopefully I've increased my capacity to care beyond the animal kingdom. But, you know, at the time I had this cat for 17 years and, you know, had the lock of hair. She's no longer around, but I still have the lock of hair of it. Hopefully I have some metaphorical locks of hair of yours also. So I think I want to start. I think this is going to tie in with some things we've heard. Let me know if I'm not talking loud enough to. So a few of us yesterday had been reading the same book. We were reading the first chapter of Justin's Another Heart in His Hand, and there was a line in there that struck me, which was that I think it was something like everyone, let's see, how is it? Everyone wants to belong. No, everyone, belonging feels great, and feeling separate feels terrible. Something like that. I'm not quite saying it right, but I was thinking about that, like that how very much everybody wants to belong, and how really bad it feels to feel separate from the smallest things, of the smallest little kind of cliques that you could feel like that you belong to, that make you feel good. Or even in a conversation, right? Say you're in a conversation and you're standing around after the Sunday meeting, and there's 3 people standing there, and then maybe you're the 4th person, and you come up and you stand there, and for a while the other 3 people are kind of talking to each other, and they know what the subject is, and they're looking at each other, and you're not quite up to speed yet. and maybe no one's even looked at you. You know that feeling? I mean, you know, like everyone's been giving little examples, so that's a little example, but you know, it's like you can't wait until you can figure out something to say. Do you figure out what they're talking about? And then you have some comment, maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not, but you're going to, you know, get it in there, because then at least everyone's going to look at you and they'll hear you, and, you know, hopefully it'll be okay what you say, and you'll feel like you belong to that conversation. And, you know, so there's that on one end, and then on the other end, you know, there's something of belonging to, you know, I don't know how big that goes, but belonging to the human race and belonging to what created you and like that. So somehow I feel like I want to talk about that idea, because it was the idea that jumped out to me when reading this chapter recently, and I was talking about it with a couple people. So since everyone, I think, likes stories, I'll start with a little anecdote. So yesterday evening, I went to the Celtic Festival in town at the fairgrounds, which I think it was the first time that I've been, because the tickets are very expensive and I'm kind of a cheap ass. And but somebody gave me 2 free tickets, so I went. And I like music a lot, and so, you know, it was great. And so I'm sitting there. I went with DJ, my husband, and we're sitting there listening to the music on one of these great chairs, you know, so I brought a little home with me. And at one point, the music, it gets pretty lively. So this is like Scottish and Irish music, pretty much traditional music with fiddles. And I don't know how much you've listened to this stuff, but it can really rock. These guys can play like, accomplished musicians. They can play really fast, very energetically. And even though it's traditional stuff, it's like very, very lively. So of course, I wanted to dance, right? And get up and dance. So there was a number of people in the front of at the stage, you know, like there is in a concert. Oftentimes there's people in the front of the stage that are dancing around. So I was like, I got to get up there, you know. So I get up there, and everybody's kind of, you know, bouncing around. I'm dancing, you know, kind of dancing. And then I look over to my left, and there's a couple. The guy's got a kilt on. Some of the people dress up. And he's dancing with this other woman who's also sort of dressed in some kind of outfit that's supposed to be fitting in some way. It's kind of hard to say what it is, but some kind of flowing dress with a little thing on her head. And they start doing like a square dance kind of a thing where they're, you know, locking arms and going around in a circle. And I was standing right next to them, and I could feel I wanted to do that. I wanted to belong to that, but they weren't looking at me. They were looking at each other, and they were the only ones that were doing this thing. And they had the matching outfits, you know, and you know, the guy wasn't looking at me at all. The woman maybe caught my eye a little bit. So, you know, I could feel that separation in that moment, and I wanted to belong to this thing. And then somehow this thing became a little bit contagious. And then there was some more people that were doing this thing. And then I caught the eye of the woman, you know, and then, you know, I grabbed her, and we were going around. And then it seemed like a kind of a magical thing happened. Within a relatively short amount of time, there were a lot of people, like, I don't know, 20 people or something. They're spontaneously doing a contra dance or square dance or whatever, and people are dancing around with each other, you know, and I looked over at a guy behind me who, as of yet, had not participated in this, and I just could feel like this guy wants to do this, but he doesn't. He feels separate. He's not part of it. He's a little more whatever, you know. So I like look over, you know, I grab him, and we're going around, and then, you know, then DJ comes up. He was feeling separate over on his chair. He ends up coming out, you know, and we get him in this thing, and this thing happened for, I don't know how long it was, you know, 5 minutes or something maybe. It was like otherworldly, really. It was a spontaneous thing because of the circumstances, right? Nobody knows each other. Nobody knows I didn't know any of these people. I saw one person that I knew there, but nobody, the people that were dancing, nobody knows each other. The band is right in front of you. They are putting out big time. It's amplified with the microphones, or maybe the instruments are electric, I don't know. But, it's like this powerful thing. It's nighttime. You can't see people that well. And this thing happens for a little while, and, and then finally, of course, the music's over and the thing disperses and whatever. But for this isolated chunk of time and this isolated circumstance, this thing happened where like the boundaries of separation disappeared. This is my translation anyway. This is how I'm translating it. And people felt like they belonged. I certainly felt like I belonged to this dance group or whatever, humans, joyful humans jumping around, it was not artistic. And, and then there were just, like I was saying, all these tiny little mini moments where you see somebody and it's going to be, do we belong to the same, do we belong? Can we do this thing together? Can we not? Can we do it? And anyway, I thought it was fascinating and yeah. I thought it was fascinating. I just thought of this example. I was sitting here before the Sunday meeting started, and we have people on that are watching through the computer, so we try and keep this aisle here open so that you guys can see me unobstructed, right? So somebody asks Dominique to scoot over. And I'm sitting right here. And so, the chair was 4 inches away. And then, in order to make room for this aisle here, she had to scoot it over another 3 inches, which left an inch between us, right? And there was like this little moment there, it's like, how close can I get to you? How close is this okay? And then we have Dylan here, who I've known for much longer. So I'm in between them, and Dylan's in my feet. See, in this moment it wasn't okay, but they touched. I don't know if she noticed. I was very aware. Our feet were actually like touching. And with Dominique, I was like an inch away, and then Dylan and I were touching. And there's like this, it's like a small thing, but there's all these things going on, It's like, how connected are we? What's okay? What's not okay? How much are we in the same camp? And it's all very interesting. So I have this other example of something. So in the morning yesterday, I had a full day. So in the morning, I went to a pickleball event. So I like playing pickleball. I like the sport. And so yesterday they had their annual picnic and games event. So I went to it. And so they, instead of just playing pickleball, they organize games that are kind of a little bit goofy and different. And there's other various rules for how to play these things. So these are all mostly people in my age group. So no youngsters, right? They're all senior citizens pretty much, with a few exceptions. So first we get the explanation of how the games are played, and then we're set loose, and we have coaches on each court to remind us how to play these games. So we're set up in teams, we're starting to play, and people are really into it. And sometimes the rules are a little unclear because we've never played these particular games before. And so it's like, no, you're supposed to serve, this side serves, and you have to do this. And I'm starting to have judgments about the other people. And a little bit feeling a little separate and superior to the other pickleball players, of which of course I'm one of them, but I don't initially realize that. And I'm thinking God, these people are 60 in their 60s, and they're getting this worked up about, the rules of the game. And then some of them, the coaches have children's party hat kind of things on, little bands with it. It was Cinco de Mayo themed, like a taco and a, I don't know, piñata or something. You know, and I'm thinking like, Jesus, this is like, you know, kid's birthday party, and then there's a piñata set up for later. It's like, I'm thinking, oh, you got to be kidding. Right? What do you think we are, right? You know. So then there's a moment where somebody isn't following one of the rules. It's supposed to be that when you get to the the new court, you're supposed to flip for which side of the which side you are. And I could feel in myself, they forgot to do this. The person in charge didn't flip the coin, and I didn't get the side. I got the sunny side instead of the shady side, and I could feel this thing come up in me. It's like, hey, this isn't, you know, this isn't how it's supposed to be, and something was watching, you know, because I do sometimes use the tools, right? I'm putting in some effort to have some moments of seeing myself. So there I am. I'm exactly like the other people I'm having judgments about. And then I'm also in the same age group as they are. And I could have been hanging out with you guys yesterday, and I chose, you know, I wanted to go play games with these people. You know, it was going to be a party, right? Games, you know. And so it was this, I think it was like a great example, and like a moment for me. It was like I loved that example of the what was it? Didn't know this about race car riders or something, you know, but they like go out and then they have the parachute and it kind of pulls them back. That really conveyed it to me. But it was like this. I'm just like, you know, it was just like that. I could feel the thing in me that I had judgments about everybody else, but then there was something that was like, I saw myself from here. I saw myself standing there with all those other people, just like them. And it kind of, you know, it took away the separation. And it's just like, yeah, I'm just another, you know, 65-year-old woman looking to play some games and have a good time. You know, I'm just like them, just exactly like everybody else here. And I think that's really interesting because, like, when you hear words like oneness and union and even, you know, lack of separation and dissolving into the one, you know, it can sound very esoteric and very something, you know, but I think like these little moments of not seeing the divinity really, but seeing the like our common human, how we are, and seeing there's lack of separation. It does make one feel more in it with other people when you see how ridiculous, when I see how ridiculous I am, it can, and I know how ridiculous you are. You know, it can bring us together. And I think there's a whole range of this process. And I'm not saying this is the process. I'm saying I think this is part of the process, because there's also some experience a person can have in meditation. There's, you know, there's a whole range of experiences that can, I think, break down separateness. But I think this is one of them, and I think it's really interesting and something I guess, having some moments of noticing that for myself. I think it's very interesting. This is on the same thing with a little bit of I don't know, maybe it's not a jump really, but so we were reading, and I was reading in Another Heart in His Hand, in chapter 1, and there's some interesting big ideas in there, including the idea of separation versus belonging versus not being separate and like that. But one of the things that I noticed is the author, the character who's like narrating the book, he puts in these sentences that reveal his maybe inadequacies, you might say, and his embarrassment, which I think is very interesting. So there was a line in there sort of very early on where he's having a conversation with someone, with with Ray. I don't even know if he's said what his name is, but the poker player at the beginning, the one poker player is meeting the other poker player. They're having a conversation, and the narrator is saying that the guy who's talking, Ray who's talking, is talking about some kind of big idea, and he's not really following, and he doesn't really get it. And he says that he nodded his head as if he understood and said, yes, go on. But then the narrator writes in the book, but actually I was feeling insecure and didn't really know didn't have anything good to say, so I nodded my head and pretended that I knew what he was talking about. And I thought that was very interesting that the author of the book wrote that in that sentence in there. And then there was another one later, it was kind of similar, and if I can quite get it, but where he says something that it was a certain moment in the conversation and he didn't have anything good to say, and he was feeling nervous about revealing his inadequacies, that he didn't know what to say, or something like that. And I think it's interesting because like those are the things we usually don't want people to know, right? We don't want people to know that we don't have anything interesting to say, so we're not going to say anything, or that we're feeling awkward. Those are the little mini things that we feel, some deficiency that we try and hide. But the author is clearly making a point of writing these things in the book. And I feel like that's what we get encouragement to do. I was in a part of a conversation a day ago maybe, where somebody said something and there was maybe I wish I hadn't said that, because it's like a stupid thing to say. And then Justin says, well, no, that's what's supposed to happen. You're supposed to say your stupid thing, then I say this, and then and that's how stuff gets worked out and freedom happens. It's through this process. So I think this is tied up with the idea of separateness and belonging. The only reason that I wouldn't say what's going on with me or express some feeling I'm having is because I feel separate, right? And separateness feels terrible and belonging feels wonderful. But there's this thing that has to happen in between. And how does that happen? And I'm thinking of an example a couple of days ago where somebody was feeling bad and revealed something that was going on with them. And then I think probably everybody felt closer afterwards. But there must have been a little resistance for this revealing to happen. And like I said before, about that seeing yourself as you are and knowing something about yourself can work on the dissolution of separateness by seeing how you are like other people. Or similarly, I think having the courage to reveal some inadequacy or something stupid or whatever it is, reveal yourself, that's part of the process too. That's maybe specific, like saying what's happening with you. In the moment, you might not think that that's the thing that's the key to go from your feeling of separateness to feeling, like this. But I think that's very definitely part of the process, and it's an interesting one. And I don't use the word courage lightly. Because even in the tiny little micro moment, when you're thinking whatever you're thinking or you're feeling whatever you're feeling, and you don't know if it's safe to put it out because you're not quite sure. Do you belong, and what's the reaction going to be? But if that revealing happens, and that I think that's part of getting free and feeling lack of breaking down separation. And it's so something that I can wrap my finger around, and I can understand that, that somewhere between my experience and my union with the divine, I can understand that that's something that's there's something in the way there, and there's some exploration there that has to happen, you know, in that progression. Oh, gosh. See if there's something else I want to say about that. Well, this is going back maybe. I'm thinking of I could have this wrong, but I'm thinking that Johanna may have talked about this when she spoke last time, but that song, Have No Envy, No Fear, a few of us were singing it a couple of weeks ago, and there was a line in that song that said something like, when your friend is in pain, you know, take away her pain by showing her we're all the same. So that's like, I'm thinking of that as like encouragement that we can use, that I can use in encouraging myself and you to be experimental with revealing who we are to each other, because, oh my gosh, I think we're pretty much all the same, right? It's only, I think, proportions of how much each of us have all of the different qualities. You know, somebody's a better musician and somebody's a better crocheter and someone else is better with the DR, but we all have the same threads, I believe, that make up the human unit. And they're just, the colors are just, the combinations are just a little bit different, but we're all the same. That's why we can look at each other and know something about what's going on with each other if you know it in yourself. So I guess that's circling around a little bit of how that process happens of feeling part of something. You get to know, if I know myself, I can know that in other people, and then I know it in myself. It all kind of, you know, circulates. So I think that's what I have to say today.